Hi, welcome to the Whiskey Chicks podcast. My name is Amy.
And I'm Amy's sister, Suzie.
We are going to be talking to you about Whiskey Chicks. You may ask yourself, what in the world is a Whiskey Chick? Well, it's a term our Nana, our grandmother, used to describe anything and everything, like a doodad or a thingamajig.
For our purposes today, Amy and I have framed Whiskey Chicks as those random moments in life that accumulate over time that compel us to grow, learn, and evolve. Whether it's good, bad, ugly, funny, or sad, with each Whiskey Chick comes a lesson, an aha moment, a lotus blooming from the mud and muck, resulting in wisdom and healing.
Whiskey Chicks have brought us both to a place in our lives where we love ourselves and speak our truths. The last thing Nana said to me before she passed on was, "Be true to yourself, little A." That was the nickname she had for me. The angel spoke straight through her in that moment, and I knew I had quite a journey ahead of me. It was that Whiskey Chick, the last Whiskey Chick she delivered, that set me off on an incredible growth journey. She is the force behind this creative endeavor. We dedicate every Whiskey Chick to her. We're grateful you're here.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Whiskey Chicks podcast. I'm Suzie.
And I'm Amy.
And here we are with episode 24?
No, really?
I think it's
I thought we were
24.
pushing. Oh, no, I guess it is. Well, 24, 25, whatever.
I think I would look that up before we hit record.
That's okay. Here at the Whiskey Chicks podcast, we fly by the seat of our pants, so it doesn't matter.
That's right. That's what we love to do. Anyway, so we touched on this subject last week, and then we decided we were going to talk about it this week. And before we hit record, I was saying how I think, obviously the generation that you grow up in has a lot to do with the adult that you are because of, how you grew up. So we're going to talk about Generation X, which is what we are. Yep. And so for those of you that don't know what Gen Xers are, if you want to say it cool, those are for Americans that were born between 1965 and 1980. So if you were born between those years, listen up because you're going to relate. No, you'll relate either way. But, so this is the generation that, is it preceded?
Wait, so
what follows the baby boomers and precedes the millennials? We're sandwiched between those two generations.
Right. So I was born in 67. You were born in 72.
72,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so just so everybody knows. Yeah.
Now everybody knows how old we are. Whee!
Well, we're solid. We're solid Gen Xers. I mean, It's like I was born in the late 60s, so I'm totally a kid of the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, so we talk a lot, or I talk a lot with people that are younger than me, and I know you and I talk a lot. We actually lately, maybe that's what's been leading up to this. We've been sending each other reels on Instagram of like commercials from when we were kids of like toys we used to have or stuff that scared us. We're like, oh my God, what is that? And because, we were, and this is true for a lot of I'm just going to say Gen X, just generation has a lot of syllables. For a lot of Gen X peeps is that most of us were latchkey kids. That is actually a fact. And for those of you that don't know what a latchkey kid is, that means that your parents are divorced and the other parent works full time and you're basically left by yourself or with neighbors that know you're alone. Or like in our situation, Amy is raising my brother and I. And
at age 10.
And the TV is an additional learning coach / babysitter. So
we were basically left to our own accord. I mean, it was frightening. But look, we're here.
And look how we turned out. But yeah, Gen Xers are more or less like a lot of single parent households, a lot of divorces, parents working constantly. And remember at that time, like entertainment for us was the television or maybe a pet or each other. We didn't have technology. We didn't even have cable television. We didn't even have call waiting. Like we
We
didn't
had the
have any
time
of that.
lady.
We had the time lady. Was it blah 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 1212 or whatever?
And then
I don't even remember.
at the tone, the time will be
Or you didn't
6:58
you didn't
and
Google it.
20 seconds.
You called information 411.
Right.
You
Right. No,
wanted to,
but
your mom leaves you $20 and you want to get Pizza Hut and you don't know the number, you got to call 411. You can't just Google it and have
or you look in the
freaking
phone
DoorDash.
book,
Yeah, I have the phone book,
the yellow
which
pages.
which weighed more than probably I did. And, Uber doesn't deliver it, right? I mean, it was, yeah. So just like now that we're in our 50s, I'm really realizing, like, looking at younger people, I guess millennials and whatever the generations are called after that, just like the differences when, like if we were sitting in class and you wanted to like get a note to a friend, like it was like, dun, 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 and you're like writing it on a piece of paper, like seeing if anybody's watching you and waiting for that moment. And the teacher turns around, you pass it to the person next to you, and then they pass it to that person, then the other person. Yep. And then, if the teacher hears the note uncrinkling, like, yeah. But now,
remember those fortune telling things? Remember those fortune telling?
Beep, 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 beep. Yeah, I could never do those. Yeah.
Like you open, close your fingers and you pick a color and then you pick a flap and then it tells you suck or whatever.
Yeah. Your favorite color is blue.
But when I was born, there weren't push button phones yet. We were still on rotary.
Yep.
And rotary still existed well into the 70s and even in some 80s households. And then we went to push button, and eventually, I think when did like cordless come into play? The early 90s, maybe.
Probably.
Then there was a cordless phone, and then finally, in the late 90s, the first cell phones started to appear, and they were size of a brick. But to Susie's point, we literally, the only way we stayed connected to each other was to hop on our bike and ride down the street and knock on somebody's door, or pick up the phone and call somebody, or wait to see them in school. We took a school bus every single day. A school bus is a commodity now. In most here where I live, raising my daughter, we would have to pay for the school bus if I wanted her to take her to school, or the bus to take her. So I ended up just taking her every day. I mean, there's no more lockers in the hallways at the school. They went bye. I mean, we always had a locker. We had a gym locker. We had a book locker. Those are gone because of all the shenanigans and drugs and whatever. But it's just the differences are just unreal. But boy, did we learn some skills and have some street smarts.
Just sorry to punctuate the phone thing. Do you remember when, after we got push button phones, then came the phone with the pad inside the phone, and like you would have it on your shoulder, and like you'd have like waffle face from the buttons, or like you got something in your tooth and you're like on the button, and your friend's like, what was that? Just like that. Now that doesn't happen anymore. But
there wasn't call waiting. You just got a busy signal.
No.
And then there were pay phones. You had to drop.
Talk about triggering anxiety. There was nothing you could do. Nothing.
Nope,
you couldn't even text to be like, get off the phone.
Nope.
There was nothing. You had to wait.
And we had.
Don't get me started on. No, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go. You go.
Don't get me started on, vinyl albums, 8-track tapes, cassette tapes. I remember when CDs came out, it was like, whoa.
I know.
When the yellow Sony Walkman went to the Discman, oh my God.
Well, first it was just the silver Walkman, and then it became Walkman Sport. That was the yellow one. And
supposed to be, I think it was supposed to be waterproof, wasn't it?
Something like that. But it just astounds me. I mean, I've always felt like the Gen Xers were kind of like, we're this in-between generation where we fully knew the old ways, but we're young enough to have to move into the into the now and adopt the technology. We're not like our parents who are, you know, in their 70s, 80s, whatever, and they either choose to have a cell phone or not. I mean, we're working still, we're not retired yet, you know, that sort of thing. So we've had to adopt the technology as we've gone, but yet we know what it was like on the other side of it, you know, before any of this happened. And, you know, raising my daughter was born in 2002, and I watched her go through school, and it was crazy. I mean, when we were in school, we had to go to the library and use the Dewey Decimal System and go to the card catalog or the microfiche and look stuff up. We had encyclopedias. We did term papers and reports from encyclopedias. There weren't even computers yet. I didn't even lay my hands on a computer until I got to my freshman year in college in 1985. I think it was maybe 86 when I finally put my hands on this huge dinosaur IBM computer with giant floppy disks. And, you know, you hand wrote your term papers. Maybe you had a typewriter, tick, 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 ding, and you put the thing across. But nowadays, I mean, my daughter, it would crack me up. She'd be working on her homework and she'd just ask, they have Siri and Alexa, you know, Siri, what's this? And Siri gives them oh, my phone just came on. Go away, Siri.
You summoned Siri during the podcast.
Oops, she's saying, sorry, I don't understand. Go away, Siri. But I don't think she's ever had to pick up a reference book, ever. Mm-hmm. Everything's online, or she asks Siri, even test taking. Like if she doesn't know the answer to something. Siri, what? You know, like,
I know, oh it's like there's no work involved. I remember going to the library at school and like all the little drawers that were alphabetized with the little file cards, or those like I don't even know what they were called. They were like those big TV things that had like you were like looking up articles and you had to like move this thing around, and the thing went up and down, and those things always terrified me. But yeah, there was like a lot of work involved in getting through school and doing projects and book reports and term papers and science fair crap. And, you know, it's like you literally had to hit the books.
Yep.
You know, we didn't stare at screens. I mean, barely even TV screens, which brings me to this point. Here's a few facts about Gen Xers and what they experienced during their lifetime so far. So we were alive during the emergence of when AIDS became an epidemic in the 80s.
That's right.
And that led to that whole term and category of safe sex. Mm-hmm. That's when that was born. We lived through the end of the Cold War. We saw the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. I remember being in high school in my German class watching that. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 91. We saw the first space shuttle flight, successful one, in 81. And then 5 years later, the one that exploded right after it took off.
I was watching the TV from the sorority house at San Diego State when that happened. I saw it on TV as it was happening.
Yeah, that was crazy. We lived during the height of the whole war on drugs and when Just Say No became a thing to drug use. Recessions. But here's one of the biggest things, historical things about Gen Xers. 1981, MTV.
MTV.
Yeah.
What was the first video?
One of my favorite. Video killed the radio star.
That was the very first video that was ever what about with the not the Bugaloos. That was another Gen X TV show. What was the name of that group?
Let me look it up on my iPad right now.
Oh my God, Amy, I'm pathetic.
I know it's
the bug something bug.
The Buggles.
Buggles.
Yeah, you were close.
And it had bug in it.
You're bugging, but yeah. So those are just like some things that happen. But really, so Gen X people are usually known for like their creativity and resilience and perseverance, because we didn't have the tools that we have now to live. I mean, we had to be really, really scrappy. And for those of you that were lucky, I shouldn't say lucky, fortunate enough to have two loving parents that raised you and were there for you. I mean, I would be really curious to talk to a Gen Xer that was raised like that. I don't think I know anybody that was. I mean, even thinking in school, my friends, like everybody was like, oh, let's go over to my house. My parents aren't home. You know, I was like, yay. You know,
Right.
So I mean, that was like all day. Wait, I had one friend that had two loving parents. I can't say her name, but because I used to go over to her house like every day.
Or a nuclear family where you've got original bio mom and dad together and married, and
yeah. And then there's the added fun bit where, like, for me, I had you and Mike in front of me going through school, and we all went through the same school, and we kind of have like a very unique and interesting last name. And so, you know, where you came through first and you were always, you know, getting really good grades and the head cheerleader and blah, blah, blah. And then Mike was kind of like somewhere in between that. And then, so they never really knew it was coming with me. But I think a lot of Gen Xers experience that too, like with the siblings in front of you. And it's like, oh, are you so-and-so's sister? Yes. Every year.
Which brings up the Marsha episode. Marsha.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah,
you were head cheerleader and I was a band geek. So there's that.
But we had our childhood. It was so different. I mean, there weren't any concerns about the food supply. I mean, we ate white bread and potatoes and meat, and we drank out of the garden hose, and that's how we had our water. And it's just, we rode our bikes, we played outside till dark, and as soon as it got dark, that's how we knew it was time to go home. You know, and if you were off doing whatever, your parents couldn't find you unless they stood outside and screamed your name, and if you heard them, great. But you know, it was just such a different time. And now we're freaked out about food and gluten and this and that and allergens, and everything has shifted and changed so much. And I mean, we ate whatever we wanted because we were active, we were outside, we were playing, we were running around, and we weren't sitting on computers or playing games or in front of the TV, because the TV was only so entertaining. I mean, there was some shows and it went off at midnight. It played the Star Spangled Banner, and then it went off at midnight. You couldn't even watch past midnight.
Made me think of the movie Poltergeist.
With all the static.
Yeah. They're here.
Carol Ann. But, I mean, it was just such a different environment. And to be a Gen Xer in this day and age, having all of that, just all of that in your history, for me, the memories are so strong. And now that I'm almost 57, next month, I'll hit the big 57. And, it's like I long for those times again. I don't know if it's I'm having a midlife crisis, but it makes me almost melancholy, like wishing I could go back to the simpler. The times were so much simpler, and to know both lifestyles is kind of a strange oxymoron for me. But anyway,
I hear that. I totally hear that. You know, it's funny when I'm at work and I ask someone a question, I'm going to say about 80% of the time they pull their phone out of their back pocket to get an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you just made me really sad when you did that. Like, are you sure you don't know? Like, but it leaves little for conversation. Now, the three of us growing up, especially before our mom remarried and we moved into a bigger house when she was, you know, more of a single parent, and she was a nurse. So she worked crazy hours in a hospital, but, and everything, you know, you were pretty much mommy and babysitter and looking out for us. But, we did some creative ass shit, man. Like, mom would buy us like a set of toys for something, and like we would make something out of it. Or let me rephrase that. You and Mike would take what you wanted and gave me what the leftovers of the crap of the toy selection that you didn't want. That's okay. That was my position of being the youngest. But you know, I remember so many times with us like sitting on the green shag carpet in the living room and like playing together.
Yeah.
Like we were playing together and playing off of each other and laughing, and then there was some torturing, but that's normal with siblings. But it's like nowadays everybody is so just in this tunnel between them and the technology in front of them. And I'm not saying you can't be creative with technology, but I'm just saying, like, do you know what happens to you when so wait, let me just say this. So we didn't know any better. Like we didn't know what life was like with technology. So I feel like we were more put in a position to be more creative and inspired by the things that were simply around us that we had, which was nothing fancy or special, or being outside, or, you know, putting a playing card on your bike. So it's like, you know, on the wheel, or, you know, just something like silly like that, where you're out in the neighborhood and you're playing with other children, and simple games like frisbee and basketball and, you know,
Red
kicking a soccer ball around,
Yeah.
handball or something, you know, riding bikes around the neighborhood, where now it's just like, you know, I got a PS5, man. You want to come over and play? I don't even know what a game is. I don't even know any
They
of
don't,
that.
you know, and a lot of these gamers, they don't even have to be in the same room together. They can be in other different states, different countries, and
Are you
playing with
kidding me?
each other. No.
I didn't know that. They can
Yeah.
like we're podcasting, they can play PlayStation remotely.
Yeah.
Oh no.
There's like, it's kind of like if you, like all these apps that are all these games on your phone. You know, you download the app so you can play the game, and there's other players too, right? So some of these games you can compete with other people, but some of the more advanced games, you come online with, like your friends or whatever, and they can be in completely other locations or whatever, but you're all playing together if you have the setup, if everybody has the same setup at their homes and stuff. But you don't even have to sit side by side. Like we had our first exposure to video games at home was Atari. Oh my God, you know, and it was so simplistic, but we'd have to sit side by side with our wheels or joysticks and, you know, and play, you know, the Space Invaders, you know, and coming down the thing and pew, pew, pew. You know, just...
You know what Atari game gave me the worst anxiety was Asteroids. Because your little spaceship's like sitting in the middle, and it's like some half-assed freaking Jaws music. It's like and then the asteroids get closer, like that. You're just trying to spin around and shoot it. And
they move faster,
and then when it hits you, you're like you just break into like 3 little stick pieces. That caused me so much anxiety because the joysticks weren't. Or that was maybe that was the paddle. I can't remember.
It was a paddle.
Was it a paddle? Yeah. That and like when we play Breakout together.
Breakout.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then we go to the arcade if we really wanted to be fancy and play Miss Pac-Man and Donkey Kong and Tempest and Q*bert and all that. And I remember when Dungeons and Dragons came out, that was like, oh my God. There was the technology with that was like, oh, but it just, and even at least the arcade too was social, right? You'd meet your friends there at the mall or whatever.
Hang on the side of the machine while they're playing.
Exactly. Centipede, millipede, you know, all that stuff. But, I always felt like
I always felt like I was Vegas rich when I would put $5 into the quarter thing. It's like, out comes all the quarters. I'm like, yeah.
I just hit the jackpot.
It freaked me out yesterday when I had, these people come to my house to buy stuff off Facebook Marketplace, and they were going to Venmo me the money. And I'm standing there with my phone. I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm like, here's my QR code. I just can't even do it. I can't even do it.
I remember, Mom, anytime we went out, Do you have a dime? Do you have a dime for phone call? Do you have a dime? Do you have a dime? In case you had to make a phone call. And she always made sure we had dimes on us so that we could go to a payphone and make a phone call if we were in trouble.
Now look at us. If you sit at an intersection, everybody that walks in front of you looks like a Neanderthal because they're just looking down at their phone.
Oh my God. Everybody's got such neck problems. Everybody is forward, constantly forward, looking
They're like,
down. And not to mention, you didn't hear about things like sleep hygiene back then. I mean, everybody just turned off the lights and went to bed. There typically wasn't TVs in bedrooms and things like that, but you turned off the lights and you went to sleep. Now we lay in bed, we're on our phone. I mean, we've got this blue light exposure right up until the time we decide to actually try and go to sleep, and then we can't sleep because we've had all this blue light exposure and stimulation to the brain. And so everybody's insomnia is just such a huge problem now, and that leads to other health problems. So it's technology's great, don't get me wrong, but the balance, I think, for a lot of people just isn't there anymore. There really is no balance. You have to force yourself to balance, to move away from technology and take breaks. And so I always admire parents that limit blue light time, screen time, but you see, and this is no judgment, but usually if a child needs calming or is upset, they're given a phone or an iPad, even like young, like a year old, to entertain themselves. And I see little ones that know exactly how to tap and swipe and tap and swipe. And I mean, it was like, oh my God, when I was that age, I had like baby fart and belch, and like baby dolls and stuff. I didn't have, so Raggedy Ann, and it's just such a different world. And the Gen Xers, we're kind of in this really interesting place. The baby boomers are now pretty much retired and maybe not even on the earth anymore. But the Gen Xers are an interesting generation because we really were immersed in both. We are immersed now, and we were as kids in a very, very different time. And it for me, I don't know how many times a day I feel like I want to go back. How can I make it simple again? But here we are.
I mean, yeah, I think about a lot of things having to do with like when we were growing up and in school, like we ate a lot of SpaghettiOs and Velveeta and Wonder Bread and Oscar Mayer bologna. And, sitting in class, teachers were never really looking at kids that had ADHD, and, they just thought something else was going on. So that's why I know a lot of adults that are discovering they're being diagnosed with ADHD, and some of them choose to, take a course of treatment, whether that be therapy or medication or whatever. And I know I have ADHD. I think a lot of us do naturally. But I'm just like, you know what? This is how I am, and I'm so used to it, and I can't imagine like wanting to change it. So I'm just aware of it. But we overthink everything now. Everything we put in our bodies, everything that we're taking in with, watching things and politically, and everything is so overthought now and blown out of proportion. And in my opinion, and this is my personal opinion, even though technology connects us in a lot of ways, like I'm grateful for a lot of technology and how that connects us to our friends and family that live on the other side of the planet, I just don't feel like anybody knows how to communicate anymore. And the biggest part of communicating is actively listening. And I feel like we're losing that. And I think about times, even like 100, 200 years ago, where people still got around. People might have not had like electricity or, TVs or whatever, but people still survived. They might not have lived as long, but it's like it was fine. Everything was okay. Like people were able to live. And I just feel like now everything is just so overdone. Everything is over everything.
And as a
And
result,
it
we're all
creates
overwhelmed.
stress and anxiety and fear. And all of that makes me want to, like you say, go back to the simpler times of coming home from school and knowing I have to do homework, but nope, I'm going to ride my bike for a while, or I'm going to go play hopscotch. I'm going to go draw on the sidewalk and play hopscotch or handball against the garage and just kind of decompress instead of, looking up crap on the internet or asking Siri a question or, playing a video game, I don't know. I just feel like we're out of touch a lot. So I'm actually glad to be a Gen Xer because, we've lived before, during, and now what's going on now. We've seen like a huge evolution of, I mean, not just technology, but with how people are, with even diversity with people and where they come from and their sexual orientation and, how they present to the world. Like, I'm so glad that we've been alive to witness the whole like progression of that leading up to now. So it's sort of like we're sandwiched between two incredible generations. So I'm actually really grateful for that. So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that part of the challenge is we're faced with, no matter what we want to accomplish, whether it's as simple as buying a loaf of bread or as complicated as buying a car or whatever, we're confronted or we're exposed to so many different choices and options. It's like you can't even go grocery shopping without standing in a section going, what in the hell? I mean, there's like so much to choose from. And, going back to the thing where like simpler times, we ate potatoes and there was a couple choices for bread and we got fresh meat and we got some fresh veggies. I mean, everything was just more whole foods, super simple. And then, as we marched toward the 80s, then processed stuff started coming up and, they started discovering, I won't even get into that, but I think part of the kind of what you were talking about before is just, I think we just have so many choices now. No matter what we're doing, there's a million choices and it's overwhelming. I think we live in a state of overwhelm half the time. And so I think that for those Gen Xers that are out there that listen to us, I'm sure you can completely relate. Those of you who aren't Gen Xers, I hope you kind of learn something about this generation. But I think in the spirit of that, as far as like maybe some homework, next time you're having a moment where you're just kind of where you've sat down for a moment, don't grab your phone. Don't grab your phone. Try to think of something else you can go do. Even if it's just to walk outside for a minute, take a deep breath, do 10 jumping jacks, do something other than pick up your phone. It doesn't have to be for a half hour or whatever, but just refrain from picking up your phone or turning on the TV. You've got a moment, do something different. Pretend you're a Gen Xer and that technology is just not available to you. Just for 10 minutes and then just see how it feels.
I love that. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I like to do, and I do it more these days, is I take off my shoes and I go ground out in the grass. I just put my feet in the grass. We used to go barefoot all the time. I think about all the barefoot that used to happen, but
and from an energetic perspective, it's actually really good to go do that because it helps, because we're exposed to so much electronic and electromagnetic waves and blue light and all that. and it helps to kind of go ground with the earth and get rid of some of that. So yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Well, before we end, I'm just going to throw out there, because this just came into my head when we were kids and on our own, that my favorite snack was taking a slice of Wonder Bread with Heinz ketchup and a Kraft cheese slice and microwaving it in our new microwave. Remember, we used to do that?
Yeah, that once microwaves came out, that was like in the 70s. We didn't have that. We just would. Actually, we didn't even have wrapped sliced cheese when I was a kid. You had to peel it off the brick.
Yeah.
But
I just remember that was like, I'm like, I want pizza. Like a radioactive.
I want a poor man's pizza.
I want radioactive government cheese pizza. Anyway, I don't know why I threw that in there. I saw it in my head and I was like, I could taste it's not even cheese. I don't even know why they call it cheese.
It's cheese food.
It's like air quote cheese. Anyway. All right. Well, we actually, I like this topic. That was fun to talk about. So, anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. And we will see you on the next podcast. And we know what old Nana would say.
Be true to yourself.